Welcome to Your In Depth, where we walk through and break down our favorite fictional universes. Today, we also tally up the kills. We're going to take a look at the first season of Obi Wan Kenobi, the 6-part limited series that just came to an end. So, let's get started. The series starts off with a summary of all preceding key moments. The death of Qui-Gon, the training of Anakin, and of course the fight on Mustafar. We see the beginning, rise, and fall of Anakin. The recap ends and the series starts, and we open on a scene of younglings training. And as they train, we know what's going to happen. A door opens and in come two 501st clones, blasters raised. The Jedi that is training the younglings kill these two troopers to kick off our count. This Jedi Master, by the way, is Minus Velti, which you may have heard of nowhere. This is her first appearance, and I was only able to tell who it was because of the closed captioning. Also, though this is a flashback, we have not seen these deaths on screen yet, so Velti then leads the younglings out, and as they run, we see a Jedi fighting two 501st troopers. Quickly, the Jedi is overwhelmed and gets killed. The troopers then turn fire on Velti, who deflects their blaster fire back at them, killing them. They continue running, and Velti takes out another set of troopers. They enter through a doorway, and the younglings hide off to the side while Velti dispatches two more clones. They're really going in pairs today. They keep moving and enter a larger room where some clones close in. Velti begins to struggle a bit in holding them off, but does manage to kill off the clones. She also does get shot in the process. In the background of this scene, we do see a Jedi fighting a 501st trooper, and though he defeats the clone, he also dies. The younglings gather around Velti's body and ask, "What do we do now?"
We run.
Good answer. They start to run and we see an additional clone lying on the ground. Now, as they run, we get a wider shot of the room. Oh my god. Okay, so in here I counted 9 Jedi fighting, and in that 9, 8 of them do die, while 10 of the clones are also taken out. But it cuts to black with one of the Jedi still fighting and being surrounded. So, though it doesn't look promising, we didn't see him die on screen, and he may have survived. Maybe. After the title card, we open on Mos Eisley 10 years after Order 66. 3 Inquisitors arrive. One of them is the Grand Inquisitor, the other the 5th brother, and the final one is the 3rd sister, also known as Reva. They go through town, eventually coming into a bar and speaking to a bartender. They comment that they are Jedi hunters. The Grand Inquisitor says that they heard a rumor of a Jedi in these parts. Reva throws a knife at the bartender, but a Jedi who is hiding in the bar stops it, revealing himself. After a conflict between the Grand Inquisitor and Reva, the Jedi escapes and runs off across town. Reva reveals a desire to find Kenobi. We then switch scenes to show a big fish. This quote-unquote fish is credited on Wikipedia to be a Nibre, a type of manta that dwells on planets like Tatooine. We've seen these though in the Clone Wars movie, and I'm not fully convinced that's what this is, but it's something. We see that this is a harvesting operation and Obi-Wan is working there. He's trying to lay low. After work, he catches a train and heads on home on his Eope, which is this thing. Basically a camel. Once home, he makes himself some food, and while he's eating, a Jawa comes in with a special requested delivery. This item is actually the same toy that we see Luke playing with in A New Hope. Obi-Wan also learns of a Jedi on Tatooine. The following day, he goes to a lookout and spies on Luke from afar. No, not like that. Once night falls, he delivers the toy to the Lars homestead. And on his way out, he's stopped by the Jedi from earlier, who introduces himself as Nari. Obi-Wan goes by Ben now and suggests Nari live in hiding, bury his lightsaber, and forget the old life. We then get some scenes of Alderaan, and a young Leia. She ain't about that royalty life, so she's out in the woods instead of getting dressed for an event. Leia is ship watching until she gets found by her adoptive mother. They go on to that event, though Leia is unenthused about it. Meanwhile, a creepy guy watches from the trees. We cut to Obi-Wan, who once again is finishing up his day at work, catching the train and heading into town. He gets stopped by Owen, who tells him to leave them alone for Luke's safety. Meanwhile, in come Reva and the 5th brother. Reva cuts off some lady's hand and starts interrogating everyone about where the Jedi is. She eventually targets Owen and threatens him and his family if no one reveals the Jedi. Though eventually the 5th brother calls Reva to stand down and they leave. Back on Alderaan, we see some of the Organa's extended family come into town. They have a gathering, and Leia absolutely destroys her cousin's ego. In this party, too, we see C-3PO. Leia is told to apologize, but runs off into the woods once more instead. When she's out there, she gets stopped by that creepy dude from earlier. He, alongside a few others, are there to capture Leia and start chasing her through the woods. Throughout this chase, Alderaan guards try and help her, but one is shot. Leia is then caught. We cut to Obi-Wan sitting outside of his dwelling. He receives a message which is Bail Organa asking for help, as Leia has been taken. Obi-Wan is hesitant, saying he's not who he used to be. He tells them to find someone else as she'll be better off. The next day, Obi-Wan is at work, takes the train home, and once back in Mos Eisley, sees that the Inquisitors did find Nari. Bail visits Obi-Wan to tell him that there's no one else he trusts more to do this. Obi-Wan ventures into the desert and digs up a box. In it is his lightsaber as well as Anakin's. We cut over to a scene that reveals to us that the kidnappers were recruited by Reva. Obi-Wan gets on a shuttle to head off-world and after Leia. Obi-Wan heads to where they took Leia, which is a planet called Daiyu, a new planet that is riddled with crime. He walks around a bit and asks for guidance from Qui-Gon. He's still trying to reach his old master. Obi-Wan continues moving before getting stopped by a pink-haired girl, offering him spice.
You want some spice, old man?
This, by the way, is a fun Easter egg, as this actress here is Ewan McGregor's daughter. Obi-Wan asks for information on his daughter, which is Leia's cover that they're using, and he is told that she is a lost cause on Daiyu. He then is told of a Jedi on the planet. Obi-Wan goes to find this Jedi, who really just ends up being a scam artist using magnets as the Force while helping people off-planet, and making a few extra credits while doing it. This guy gives Obi-Wan some information necessary to finding Leia, so Obi-Wan heads onward to a chem lab. In this chem lab, Obi-Wan rigs up an explosion and pickpockets a key card from a Halloween smoke. He then heads into a back hallway. He's stopped by some people and fights them. He's then cornered by the kidnappers, who alert Reva of Kenobi's presence. Obi-Wan throws a smoke bomb of drugs at his feet and quickly slips on a gas mask, then escapes the kidnappers as they begin their trip. Obi-Wan finds Leia and tells her that her father sent him. They leave the lab and onto the streets. Meanwhile, Reva arrives on world. The other Inquisitors arrive, and the Grand Inquisitor plans on taking credit for capturing Kenobi when they do. Reva then sets a widespread bounty on Obi-Wan. He picks up on this pretty quick, and they keep moving. A bounty hunter finds them, and Kenobi knocks the bounty hunter out.
You got knocked the f*** out!
We cut to Reva atop a building scouting out the city. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan and Leia sit and lay low. Leia pieces it together that she is there because of Obi-Wan and questions if he's even the good guy in telling the truth. She then runs from him and a chase ensues. When running, Leia runs into a bounty hunter who turns and recognizes her and tries to take her, but Obi-Wan shoots it in the back. Obi-Wan knocks out another bounty hunter and Leia runs off, eventually climbing up to a roof. Obi-Wan follows as a bounty hunter shows up and starts shooting at Obi-Wan. This commotion catches Reva's attention. Another bounty hunter comes out and Obi-Wan shoots and hits the first bounty hunter, and I'd say kills it. Leia tries to jump across a gap between buildings, but falls and holds onto a cable. She loses her grip and falls, and Obi-Wan is forced, pun intended, to catch her. He's very rusty as his connection to the Force has become very weak and distant. He then comes down to meet up with her. Leia now trusts him, seeing that he is a Jedi. They approach a spaceport and realize that there are too many guards. Just then, the other bounty hunter, the droid from the rooftop, approaches but gets shot in the back by the fake Jedi from earlier, whose name is actually Haja. This droid bounty hunter I'm not going to count, by the way, because it's a droid. It's not a living being. You can argue in the comments about that, but I'm not counting it on this. Haja informs Obi-Wan of a cargo transport in a different section and tells him where to go to leave safely. He says that there are others who will help him at the coordinates that he gives Obi-Wan. Haja then sets out to buy Kenobi as much time as possible. We then cut over to the Grand Inquisitor interrogating the lead kidnapper. And as we switch scenes, we hear that lead kidnapper's scream. So I'm adding him to the count. I think that that's pretty safe to say that he died. Reva is chasing after and trying to find Kenobi and runs into Haja. He tries to distract her, saying that he's the one she's looking for and such, but she sees right through it and eventually mind probes him to find out the location of Kenobi. Real smooth, Haja. Kenobi and Leia enter the cargo port, and Kenobi is very cautious. They hear a noise and hide, and in comes Reva. She ignites her lightsaber and searches for him. Obi-Wan sends Leia off to the ship, saying to leave without him if he takes too long. He then holds his lightsaber, awaiting. Reva says she's going to take him to Lord Vader. She then informs Obi-Wan that Anakin is still alive, which visibly shakes Obi-Wan. Reva gets a bit more aggressive before the Grand Inquisitor enters and stops her. They argue a bit, and Reva impales the Grand Inquisitor. And I'm not counting this, because if you've seen Rebels, I mean, come on, son.
Good boy, son.
Obi-Wan takes this opportunity to take off and board the ship. Once he gets there, Leia starts it up and they take off. Obi-Wan stares off into space. He's obviously bothered. As he stares and spaces out, he says,
Anakin.
The scene then shifts to see Vader in a Bacta tank. We hear his breathing and it cuts to black. Aboard the cargo ship, Obi-Wan meditates, but hears the words of Reva echo. Once they arrive, there are some droids that Obi-Wan and Leia sneak past to head towards the location that Haja gave them. They walk, and Obi-Wan questions the trustworthiness of Haja. Leia asks why he would lie, and Obi-Wan snaps at her, saying,
People are not all good, Leia.
Meanwhile, Reva arrives at Fortress Inquisitorius and meets with the other Inquisitors. She reports to them that Kenobi is on a mining planet, but she doesn't know which one, so she says that they need to send out all of their probes. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan and Leia are walking and going over their cover story. They arrive at the coordinates, but nobody is there. Obi-Wan immediately thinks that they were lied to and they should just move on. Leia flags down a transport shuttle so that they can get a ride to a spaceport. A mole person pulls up, and Leia introduces themselves as Luma and Orden, farmers from Tal. The mole person introduces himself as Freck, and I'm not gonna lie, he sounds like Seth Rogen to me.
Hey there, I'm Freck.
Though he is credited to be voiced by Zach Braff, this guy. But anyway, Freck says that he's heading towards the spaceport and they can hitch a ride with him, so they do, and when they go to get in the back of his vehicle, they see an Imperial flag hanging.
You Imperial bastards!
They come up on an Imperial checkpoint and need inspection. The stormtroopers ask about Obi-Wan and Leia, and Freck says,
A couple of strays I found. Thought you might want to check them out.
Freck. The stormtroopers approach the transport and ask Obi-Wan and Leia to get down. And as they get off of the transport, Obi-Wan unlatches his holster. A probe droid enters and scans Obi-Wan, and as it's doing so, Obi-Wan draws his gun and shoots it. He then proceeds to shoot all of them in an action sequence, during it, shooting one atop a little building and causing him to fall on the energy gate and get sliced in half. 4 stormtroopers die in this sequence. As Obi-Wan and Leia move past the gate, up rolls a vehicle carrying 3 stormtroopers and an Imperial officer. The troopers run up to them, weapons drawn, and demand Obi-Wan and Leia get down on the ground. They begin to pull out some handcuffs. The Imperial officer approaches, but then shoots the 3 stormtroopers, and as Kenobi and Leia follow her, she identifies herself as the person they were supposed to meet with. The Inquisitors have been informed of Kenobi being there, as the probe droid sent a signal before being shot. They order the shutting down of the ports on Mapuzo as they are on their way. The Imperial officer says that she was on her way when the probes arrived. This officer informs Obi-Wan and Leia that there is a pilot that can get them off-world, but they're not scheduled to leave for another few hours, so they'll just have to lay low. They enter a maintenance building, and in the building is a reprogrammed loader droid designated Ned B. Wait a minute. Because he is a loader droid, he isn't programmed to speak. They enter a secret room where the officer explains it is a safe house, similar to many throughout the galaxy with the same intent. The Path, some call it. She informs them that Kenobi isn't the first Jedi to come through there. All safe houses and the Path lead to Jabim. This planet is the final destination where persecuted Jedi and Force sensitives receive new identities. A fun fact about Jabim, this planet was first shown in the new Star Wars canon on a map in a role-playing game, The Force Awakens Beginner Game, in 2016. The officer tells them that not all who pass through are Jedi. The Empire hunts anyone Force sensitive, even children. Obi-Wan sees writing on the wall and recognizes one of the names. He says Quinlan was here. The officer tells him that Quinlan Voss helps now and again in smuggling younglings. Some troopers pound on the front door and Ned B answers it. They search around, searching for the Jedi they heard entered the camp. The stormtroopers leave and try the next place. The officer says they're moving up the timeline as they need to get off planet now. They need to move. And also this officer finally introduces herself as Tala, so I can stop calling her some variation of Imperial officer. Tala opens a door to a tunnelway and indicates that they leave. Kenobi feels something strong though, and can't really walk very well. He makes his way to the front of the building and hears some screams in the distance. Vader is there. Vader approaches, walking through the streets. He stops and looks around, and at random grabs a civilian and force chokes him in the air. The man's son runs out after his father, and Vader just snaps the guy's neck with the Force, adding the boy and his dad to the final count. Tala says they need to leave, and Obi-Wan sends Tala and Leia away, telling Tala to get Leia to Alderaan. Kenobi will lead Vader away. Vader continues and picks up some lady at random, pulling her behind him. He ends up releasing her, though, and... Okay, so I personally don't think that she died. I think she just fainted. But according to my co-host, and these are exact words, that dead. So maybe we'll add her to the count. Obi-Wan leaves the building and Vader senses him, following. The Inquisitors search the rest of the town for others. Obi-Wan runs out to what seems to be a quarry and draws Vader away. While Obi-Wan's out there, he runs into Vader. He approaches and Obi-Wan asks, "What have you become?" Vader replies,
I am what you made me.
Obi-Wan runs a bit further. Meanwhile, the Inquisitors and troopers are combing the town. Reva finds the house they were in and uncovers its secret door. Kenobi keeps moving, eventually running into Vader again. Being caught off guard, they duel a little, Vader overpowering Obi-Wan. Tala and Leia split up so that Tala can go help Obi-Wan. Reva investigates the writing on the wall and eventually finds the entryway to the tunnel. Vader knocks down a silo of what I assume to be Ventrium, which is a flammable mineral. Vader then sparks that Ventrium with his lightsaber, creating a fire. He then drags Obi-Wan through the fire, saying he's going to suffer. As Tala enters onto a cliffside nearby, Vader sets Obi-Wan down and requests his stormtroopers bring Obi-Wan to him. Tala shoots the trooper that went for Obi-Wan and then shoots an explosive barrel which causes a wall of fire. Ned B comes in and picks up Obi-Wan, and Vader just watches. Now, in this, he easily could have walked through the fire. His suit would more than protect him. But if it isn't evident, Vader could do a lot here. He could have killed Obi-Wan very quick. As much as I adore Obi Wan Kenobi, he doesn't have that strong connection with the Force anymore. It has weakened, and I'd say he's a bit rusty, but honestly, that wouldn't be severe enough. Like there's rusty, and then there's untreated tetanus. That's Obi-Wan right now. But Vader isn't seeking to kill Obi-Wan quickly. He wants him to suffer like he did. And part of me wonders if he enjoys the hunt, too. So I think he intentionally let him go. But back to what's going on. Tala instructs Ned B to ready the transport. They need to get him to Jabeam. We cut to Leia to see her reaching the end of the tunnel, only to meet Reva. Leia asks if she's the one that she's supposed to meet. Reva responds by saying,
"Unfortunately, they couldn't make it. I'll take you from here."
We see the person that she was supposed to meet lying on the ground, dead. Leia begins to run, and we cut to black. Obi-Wan wakes up with fuzzy vision. He gets pieces of being on a ship and Tala telling him it'll be okay to hold on. They arrive on Jabeam and Obi-Wan is put into a Bacta tank. And we get some flashbacks of when Obi-Wan was with the Tuskens. That may be a different show. Vader is also in his Bacta, and they have this kind of convulsing connection before Kenobi shocks awake and swims out of the tank. He asks where Leia is, and we cut to Fortress Inquisitorius. Leia is being interrogated by Reva. Reva tells Leia that Obi-Wan is dead, and this is actually how we're informed of Obi-Wan's death. The old trilogy is retconned, the end. No, but we cut to Obi-Wan and Tala talking to Ice Cube Jr. He isn't too happy about helping, and this guy, whose name is Roken, informs us then of how his wife was a Force sensitive before the Empire hunted her down. He begins to kind of understand what Obi-Wan is experiencing and changes his mind, and says he'll help. They figure out that Leia is on Nur, and as Wade tells us, it's pretty simple.
It's impenetrable, Wade.
Oh. Dang it, Wade. They formulate a plan where Tala will use her clearance to get inside. Then she's going to help Obi-Wan get in once she's in there. We cut to Leia, who's still being interrogated by Reva. She's being asked about the path and about the safe houses. Leia says she knows nothing. Reva says,
Well, let's think a little bit harder, shall we?
Tala lands in Fortress Inquisitorius and walks on in. She approaches a checkpoint type section and is told her identification doesn't meet the proper clearance. She's not in the right sector. She pulls a "I'm your commanding officer" story from thin air and proceeds, putting the security officer in his place. She signals to Obi-Wan, who is swimming in the ocean outside of the fortress. Tala opens a hatch for him and he enters the fortress. Inside, he is almost caught by a guard, but knocks him out and leaves him floating in the water. Now, initially, I did think this trooper would go on the count and would be dead because he's face down in the water, but actually standard stormtrooper armor features 2 artificial air supply hoses, which we saw in the Book of Boba Fett in the Sarlacc pit. So, he actually still has oxygen, and though he's unconscious, I think he's gonna live. Obi-Wan keeps moving. Meanwhile, Reva is trying to force probe Leia's mind, and Leia just asks if it's a staring contest. Reva says that Leia is strong. She then grabs Lola, Leia's droid. Leia continues to refuse, and Reva finally says that she hopes Leia likes pain, because they're going to get an answer out of her one way or another. Stormtroopers drag her away. They strap Leia down and prepare to torture her. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan enters a room that just, wow. We see Jedi and Force sensitives preserved.
It's a tomb.
Yeah, like what he said. There are a lot in here. Personally, I counted 38 Jedi in here between the different angles. Though these are confirmed to be dead here, they didn't specifically die in the Kenobi show though. So I don't think I'm going to count these on this count, but if you guys think the lines should be drawn differently and these should count, just let me know and I'll keep that into consideration, like if anything like this happens in a future count. But among this, we do actually see Tara Sunube, which, if you don't remember from the Clone Wars, is the old Jedi that helped Ahsoka get her lightsabers back. Obi-Wan hears Leia scream and tells Tala that he needs a distraction. Reva is about to torture Leia, but an Imperial guard comes in and informs her of Tala being there to see her. Reva exits. Meanwhile, the lights go off in the room that Leia is in, and Obi-Wan stealth kills 2 stormtroopers. Obi-Wan frees Leia and they get moving. Reva orders some troopers to take Tala to interrogation, and right as this happens, a probe droid spots Kenobi and Leia and triggers an alarm. Kenobi signals for Tala and she kills the 2 stormtroopers near her. Obi-Wan starts getting shot at by the droid and then 2 stormtroopers, and through some Master Jedi shit, he kills them. In come 2 more, and Kenobi does the same. Kenobi fights off more stormtroopers, killing 3 of them. In this fight, there was also an officer with the stormtroopers, and we didn't see him get killed, but a few seconds later he's lying on the ground, so he obviously got killed. While this is going on, Obi-Wan deflects a blaster bolt into a window near them, which begins to crack under the pressure of the outside water. Obi-Wan goes all Fallen Order Vader on it, holding it back with the Force. Obi-Wan sends Leia away with Tala. Meanwhile, the stormtroopers open a door previously closed on them and enter the hallway, shooting at Obi-Wan. He directs the pressure of the water along the window to crack it and break near them. Obi-Wan takes off running and gets behind another door before water rushes in. Through the window, I counted 7 stormtroopers just floating in the water. And with these ones, I think that they did die. The 3 of them walk their way through the fortress, Obi-Wan in the worst disguise possible, though honestly I couldn't do any better. They reach the landing platform and Reva catches up with them. Reva prepares to take fire on them. They are surrounded, but in come 2 T-47 airspeeders, firing away and killing... oh boy. Alright, so I counted 3 in the first strike, and I believe 10 once the scene shifts. During this also I noticed 1 more lying on the ground than I initially counted behind Reva, so I think there's another 1. Tala, Kenobi, and Leia run to the end of the landing platform, shooting their way to the edge. During this span of scenes, I counted 13 stormtroopers and 1 Imperial officer get shot by Tala and Kenobi, with 3 stormtroopers implied to die from an explosion. They reach the edge and one of the speeders comes in and lands. They hop on and take off. In comes the other speeder, fending off Reva. They both fly away, and Reva throws an explosive at the back speeder, killing the pilot, Wade. We cut to Vader storming in and lifting Reva. He yells,
"You were warned what defeat would bring."
And he is ready to kill her. She says to wait as she is tracking them. He warns her that there can be no mistakes. We cut over and we see the air speeders loading up onto a ship, and they take off. Everyone takes a seat. Leia holds Obi-Wan's hand, and as she does, we see that the tracker Reva was referring to is Leia's droid Lola, whose eye is glowing red versus the normal blue. We open part 5 with a flashback to young Anakin and Obi-Wan during the early parts of Attack of the Clones. As their lightsabers clash, we cut to Vader. Reva walks in and informs Vader that Obi-Wan is on Jabim. Vader promotes Reva to be the Grand Inquisitor. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan and those he was with arrive and meet up with a larger group. Among this group is Haja. Obi-Wan talks to Roken, who then tells him that the others in this group are refugees, and in a few hours, once they're all out, they can transport Leia back to Alderaan. Meanwhile, Vader approaches Jabim. We see the corrupted Lola make her way up into a vent and mess with the wiring of the hangar that they're all in, closing the door. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan sees various lightsabers from those who the Path has rescued, and none of these were really identifiable to me. Obi-Wan addresses the crowd, telling them that they need to just slow down the Empire, not fight them, just to buy enough time for all the people to get out. So they start barricading the doors. Sorry, wrong footage. We see stormtroopers and purge troopers gather outside in front of the doors, loading a cannon. Reva lands her ship and joins them. She approaches and commands that they fire the cannon. Leia volunteers to crawl in the vents and figure out what's going on with the hangar door. During this time, Obi-Wan receives a call from Bail expressing his worry. He says that he fears Vader learning of the children. He says that if he doesn't hear from Obi-Wan, he's going to go to Tatooine, as Owen will need help with the boy. Obi-Wan decides to talk to Reva to try to buy some time, and through talking to her, he learns why she knows who Anakin is. Vader would have kept it hidden. Reva was a youngling on the night of Order 66. She thought Anakin was there to help, but he was there to kill them. We see a flashback, and as Anakin approaches, he kills 2 younglings. Now, she comments that she couldn't save her friends, and if we remember in the beginning scene, there were 5 younglings. She's confirmed to be one, and we just saw 2 die in the flashback, so it's pretty heavily implied that the other 2 are dead as well, and I think it's reasonable to count them here. Obi-Wan deduces that Reva isn't serving Vader, she's hunting him. Obi-Wan offers to help Reva, but she questions him, saying, "Where were you when the Westfold fell? Where were you when he attacked the temple?" Reva says she doesn't need anyone's help and cuts open the door. The battle begins. Also at the timestamp 1829, some dude is pulling a full-on Rick Grimes, which I paused and laughed at. During this battle, I tallied 43 stormtrooper deaths, 2 purge troopers, and 2 members of the Path. During this also, Tala sacrifices herself, so she's added to the count. I got the 43 number for the stormtroopers, factoring in the 11 that were assumed to be killed by the blast that Tala set off. That's how many were in the room before Tala detonated it, so I think it's safe to include them. Ned B also died during this scene, but he's a droid, and I'm not counting droids, bite me. Obi-Wan decides to surrender. He gives Haja his lightsaber, blaster, and holoprojector. Meanwhile, Leia works at the controls. Obi-Wan is marched out to Reva, who informs Vader that Obi-Wan is theirs. He talks to her, trying to sway her choice to attack Vader. The stormtroopers walk Obi-Wan away. Vader gets there, and Reva tells him that Kenobi is secured inside. Inside, Obi-Wan knocks out one of the 2 stormtroopers and shoots the other. Meanwhile, Leia discovers Lola and removes the restraining bolt on it. Back to normal, she's able to fix the hangar door. Obi-Wan meets up with a group, and they all board a ship. While they're boarding, Haja drops Kenobi's holoprojector. Vader arrives right as the ship is taking off, and he uses the Force to stop it mid-air, and starts tearing it apart to find that it is empty. There's another ship right behind it, though, that they are actually on. As Vader watches it fly away, Reva is behind him and tries to strike. Vader stops her with the Force. And really, she took her time with this. But she tries to kill Vader, and he's been onto her the entire time. He doesn't even draw his own blade. He uses the Force, eventually taking her lightsaber from her, taking it apart, and tossing her 1/2. He then fights her with her own blade, disarms her, and impales her. In walks the Grand Inquisitor. Surprise, he's not dead. Not really, no surprise. He takes his title back. Vader and the Grand Inquisitor leave her
In the gutter where you belong.
We cut over to Obi-Wan, and he's talking to Roken. Roken informs Obi-Wan that the hyperdrive is down, and the Empire is right behind them. Meanwhile, Reva is squirming around but does see the holoprojector. Kenobi senses that something is wrong. Reva gets the holoprojector and hears Bail's message about Tatooine. The children. Owen. She knows. The scene focuses in on a sleeping Luke, and it cuts to black. Part 6 has a lot of back and forth between Obi-Wan and Reva, so I'm just going to sum up what is going on with each character separately instead of bouncing back and forth, though these are going on at the same time. We open to see Reva on Tatooine looking for Owen. She asks someone where Owen is. We cut over a bit later to see Luke and Owen in a shop. Someone comes in and says there's something that Owen needs to know. They inform Owen that Reva is looking for them, so Owen and Luke rush home. Owen tells Beru of Reva pursuing Luke, and they prepare to defend their home. These two tell Luke that Tuskens are raiding farms again, and they need him to stay put and run if necessary. Night falls, and Reva approaches the Lars homestead. Owen and Beru begin to fire at her, and Reva fights back. She approaches Owen and throws things at him. He fights back decently, but asks what Reva wants. She just says, justice. Justice. Owen notices Reva's wound and punches it. He then is tossed aside and yells after Beru that she's coming. Luke climbs out of the room that he was in and takes off running while Reva chases him. She follows him into a canyon and searches for him. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan and the others are trying to escape Vader. Roken comes in and says that the hyperdrive is almost ready. Obi-Wan can kind of tell that Roken isn't being fully truthful though, and asks him what's actually going on. He says they don't have the kind of time necessary to make it out of there. They're taking more damage and their shields won't hold. Obi-Wan asks how much time they need, and Roken says,
More than we have.
Obi-Wan tells the crew that he is going to lead Vader away, and they don't really seem to like the idea and are arguing about it. Leia is particularly upset. Obi-Wan talks with Leia and basically says goodbye. He gives Leia Tala's holster and promises Leia that he will come back. Once more, Obi-Wan tries to contact his master about his speeder's extended warranty, or maybe just to commune with him, or whatever. Obi-Wan gets in a ship and departs the larger ship and heads towards a planet. Vader follows, though the Grand Inquisitor objects. The planet that Obi-Wan is going towards has been theorized to be Malachor 5, which was a location in Knights of the Old Republic 2, as well as appearing in the Rebels episode Twilight of the Apprentice. It once housed a great Sith temple. This planet, similar to Jabim, was located in the Outer Rim, so it's not an unreasonable theory that that's what this planet is, though it was never specifically named. That being said, it is just a theory, but this may be Malachor 5. Obi-Wan lands and waits, and meanwhile Vader follows. Once Vader arrives, they begin to fight. Obi-Wan has stepped it up quite a bit from the last fight. He uses the Force to try and topple a rock pillar onto Vader, but Vader stops it, commenting that Obi-Wan's strength has returned but the weakness still remains, which is why he will always lose. Vader fights back pretty hard, eventually throwing rocks at Kenobi and crushing the ground under him, causing Obi-Wan to fall into a pit. Now Vader has the high ground. He starts throwing rocks in and burying Obi-Wan, then leaves, commenting that Obi-Wan has failed. Obi-Wan thinks of Luke and Leia, knowing what he is fighting for. He throws the rocks off of him and runs after Vader, attacking him hard. He throws Vader back, then lifts up the ground, bombarding Vader with a bunch of debris. Obi-Wan starts striking Vader's control panel on his chest, then slashing his back, weakening him a bit. Obi-Wan throws him back and lunges at him, slashing part of his helmet open. Vader looks up, revealing Anakin's face. Obi-Wan says,
Anakin.
Vader replies in a very chilling way. He says,
Anakin's gone. I am what remains.
Obi-Wan gets choked up and apologizes for everything. Vader replies, I am not your failure. You didn't kill Anakin Skywalker.
I did.
Obi-Wan says, then my friend is truly dead. He says goodbye and walks off as Vader screams after him. Back on Tatooine, Reva finds Luke and throws him down a ledge, and he screams. And I know it's horrible, but when he screamed, I couldn't help but laugh. Just the sound of it is funny to me. Obi-Wan senses that Luke is in trouble and heads for Tatooine. We see Reva standing over Luke, with her saber ignited. She sees Luke as a young her and gets flashbacks of what Vader did to her. She can't seem to follow through. Obi-Wan arrives on Tatooine and lands at the Lars homestead. Owen and Beru are calling for Luke, and Obi-Wan goes to try and find him, but they see Reva approaching, carrying Luke. She sets him down and he moves a bit. Owen picks up Luke and they go inside. Reva starts crying, saying she couldn't do it. She failed them. Obi-Wan says that by showing mercy, she hasn't failed her friends. He says who she will become now is up to her. She lays down her lightsaber, and Obi-Wan helps her up. He says she's free. They both are. Leia has made it back to Alderaan. We see her and her parents go to the landing platform, and she asks who they're meeting today. More cousins? Obi-Wan comes out and gives Leia her droid Lola back. Obi-Wan tells Leia about her parents a little bit. He attributes different traits that she possesses to her mother and father without telling her who they actually are. She asks if she'll ever see Obi-Wan again, and he says he's unsure. It's dangerous for anyone to know that she knows him. He tells her goodbye and leaves. Back on Tatooine, Obi-Wan packs up his stuff and moves. He visits Owen and tells him that he was right. Luke just needs to be a boy, and the future will take care of itself. The only protection he needs now is from Owen and Beru. He tells Owen to take good care of him. Owen thinks and asks,
You want to meet him?
Obi-Wan approaches holding that toy ship, and
Hello there.
He said it! He said it!
Obi-Wan leaves and heads towards, I think, Beggar's Canyon, and begins to see a Force ghost. The Force ghost is Qui-Gon, and he says that he's always been there, but Obi-Wan just couldn't see. Obi-Wan and Force ghost Qui-Gon continue walking, and the show ends. So, how many kills occurred during Season 1 of Obi Wan Kenobi? I counted 155 deaths total, with 43 of them belonging to Obi-Wan. This puts his kill count at 28% of the total. Just a fun added statistic inspired by the channel Dead Meat, this series had a runtime of about 3.7 hours, which averages us a kill every 1.4 minutes. The Obi Wan Kenobi series came to a close, and though they have acknowledged the possibility of a Season 2, there are no plans to create one. If you guys liked this video and would like to see a similar styled one for any other piece of Star Wars media, go ahead and comment your suggestions. Otherwise, thanks for watching. Peace.